Well, I'm at Riot Games right now interviewing Michael Prindeville, who is the CEO of Dignitas. Did I get the name right? We talked about it beforehand.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Okay. Fantastic. So there's been a lot of rumors out there, and I just got a call yesterday, and now we're sitting down for an interview. So do you want to let everyone know what we're talking about here?
Sure. We're here to discuss the fact that Dignitas and Clutch Gaming are merging. So essentially, we now will be helping run and operate that LCS team.
So now, obviously, the next question everybody's going to be asking is it Dignitas now? Do I cheer for Dignitas? What's happening?
Yeah. So look, league rules require that it stays Clutch Gaming for 2019. In 2020, it will become Dignitas.
There you go. So it's straightforward.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, pretty easy. So Dignitas returning to the LCS. What has this experience been like? And maybe we should provide a little bit of context because you weren't around whenever the initial application process came through.
Correct. So I started at Dignitas last May in 2018, and honestly, like the first objective of mine was to sit down with the guys at Riot, Greeley and Chopper, this time last year actually at E3, and literally just review like what were the steps needed to create a path towards an LCS franchise, right? And we didn't know what it looked like, right? We were thinking possibly expansion a couple of years. But really, at the end of the day, it came down to needing to tighten up a few things in the organization, and they provided very clear guidance as to what that was, which we did immediately over the course of the next 6 months. And really, about November of last year, we started looking for any opportunities in LCS with teams that might want to take on a new partner or might be looking to sell. And having those conversations, as well as other conversations with other Tier 1 games, right? Whether it was Counter-Strike or Overwatch League. But ultimately, the goal and the story that we always wanted to tell was the return of Dignitas to League of Legends.
So it sounds like that conversation was a lot of, okay, what went wrong?
Yes, that was a bit of it. I mean, listen, like there wasn't an incredible amount of detail. Obviously, the application denial was well before my time, but to the credit of the guys at Riot, again, like they were very clear with my ownership group before me who had those conversations and me as well. I don't think we need to go into really what went wrong, right? But I think the point was they gave very clear directives as to what we needed to do to get things right. And like we've been working incredibly hard as an organization over the last year to do that. And like it just feels really good, obviously, to be in a place now where not only do I feel confident that we're in like a top NA org position, right? But at the same time, now we're actually getting back into League of Legends. So it's perfect.
And maybe you can provide some broader context because a lot of people know Dig, owned by the 76ers. Clutch had this relationship with the Rockets. So what does that all look like now? Are the Rockets still involved? 76ers entirely? What's that look like?
Sure. So to start with, so the 76ers are actually owned by Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, so larger holding company. They own a number of traditional sports assets, including the 76ers, the New Jersey Devils, the Prudential Center where the Devils play, which is also where we run Dignitas out of, which is Newark, New Jersey, 20 minutes from downtown Manhattan. And the ownership group, obviously, of Clutch Gaming is the Houston Rockets. So effectively now this is a merger, and both entities are still involved in a very meaningful way.
Is there any idea on, or is there any sense of which entity will be taking the reins of it? I mean, where does that line kind of divide?
Sure. So, I mean, from the operational standpoint, Dignitas will effectively start operating the LCS franchise that is Clutch, and eventually that brand will obviously, as we just discussed, morph into Dignitas. But the Rockets are effectively a very strategic partner for us going forward. They have a very meaningful stake in the business. And effectively, what we've done is we've taken two of the most forward-thinking teams in the NBA, right, who are into data and innovation, and who got into esports early, right? Like, because when you think about Dignitas, they were acquired by HBSE, and I think it was September 2016, early, right? Like the first traditional sports org entity to acquire an esports org, and 3 months later, the Houston Rockets hired Sebastian Park. right? So very forward-thinking organizations, been around in esports for a couple of years now, definitely have figured out the business, right? Obviously, there's that learning curve, and now we're uniting. So we're really excited to be in business with the Rockets. We're really excited about our geographic presence, right? We've got New York, we've got LA, we've got Houston, and we're excited about unifying the fans of Clutch now and the fans of Dignitas in the past.
Well, and I guess that's part of my question too, because the Clutch identity so far has been really born out of Houston and Texas, down to even just the way they've styled their jerseys and the sponsors that are on there, the cowboy hats.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
own a cowboy hat.
fantastic, good to hear. And so, but on the other hand, I know that whenever the 76ers got involved and the ownership got involved, I think there was like even Dignitas logos that started popping up during 76ers games. People had seen something like that. So I think that's kind of what people are going to be wondering, right? Is all right, so if I am a fan of this organization, which is now going to start being known as Dignitas in 2020, will I still see a lot of that Texas iconography on there because the Rockets are involved, or is this really going to be following sort of the standard Dignitas branding we've seen so far?
Yeah, look, I think it's a little bit of both, right? So first and foremost, Dignitas, we want to build a global entity, right? We're already global, certainly to an extent, in Europe and North America. There's headquarters, like we discussed, in Newark, New Jersey, and now we'll have an office in LA, an office in Houston through the Rockets. But in terms of the brand of Clutch Gaming, like, we're still going to be in Houston, right? We're still going to be activating in that market. We're still going to be integrating as much as possible with the Rockets. Or we just might not be wearing as many cowboy hats.
Good to get a sense of that. Now, on sort of the org side, a lot of people might be wondering: is this a situation where you come in? Obviously, this org or the team and everything sorts itself out throughout the rest of the year. But is it going to be looking really fresh on the staff side? I mean, kind of a weird conversation to have as people are still over there, but how much of that identity of that group of people is still going to be around, and how much of it might be really merged into like the broader Dignitas org?
I mean, I think anytime you have a merger situation, right, it's about putting together the puzzle pieces and figuring out where the strengths are and where the weaknesses are. And I think, we're literally a couple days into the finalization of this deal, right? But from the 50,000-foot view that we have, I think that Clutch has some incredible pieces, right? Sebastian Park has built something significant there, is a brilliant mind within esports, has a number of valuable staff members who are highly intelligent, who we value, and their skill sets kind of are in a vertical that is different from sort of the major skill sets of a lot of folks at Dig, right? So I think that there's actually brilliant fit. And going forward, look, like any organization needs to evolve, right? You need to bring new faces in. You need to push out new parts of the business. So that will happen naturally, but it certainly won't be a situation where we're going in and slashing and burning.
When you arrived at the 76ers organization, I know obviously there's a broader ownership group, but for the layman's terms, everybody's thinking of it as the 76ers. Was there any bitterness? I mean, because it was just a couple months after the team, Dig had been a part of the LCS for a long time, and then suddenly it wasn't anymore.
Not bitterness. I think it was more just like a wake-up call, So again, the application process took place in the fall, and then I came in May of 2018, so it was 6 some odd months, right? So if there's any bitterness, I didn't see it. I think it was, from my understanding and having had a lot of conversations with executives at HBSE, it was just like, how do we solve this, right? Like it was a wake-up call. Issues were identified. How do we solve this? And so. That was really like what it was all about. It was all about like, is no gonna sort of make you, curl back and want to get out of esports, or is no gonna make you go, right? And like, I'm always a guy that says no makes me go, right? And I think that kind of is the mantra at HBSE as well. And so it's really about just like, it's been about execution, and it's about doubling down on esports and doubling down on what we think is the biggest and best league in the world, which is LCS.
And sort of continuing that conversation, as there was this downtime where Dig wasn't part of the LCS, what are old school fans of Dig going to see whenever Dignitas returns? I know there's an owl now. That's what I've seen. Yeah, there's an owl. So, because the org has changed a little bit, so you guys have a different brand, and I'm just kind of curious for the old school fans, what can they expect coming into this year and especially going into next?
Well, first of all, I'd say it's an updated brand, not a different brand. We can have a beer and discuss the owl in the meeting and all that. So it's a longer story. But look, Dig has an incredible history in League of Legends, right? Like one of the most storied franchises, I would argue. And as we go forward and kind of build out this Dignitas 2.0, and we're integrating Clutch into it, right? Like, of course, we wanna be able to harken back to the good times of Dig and the folks who helped produce those moments, and we'll be doing that. But at the same time, like we'll continue to evolve as an organization as well. Like this will be a brand that has elements of the past and new elements to push forward in the future.
Kind of shifting gears, what is your take on the LCS now a year and a half into it? Because there has been some discussion around monetization and, recently broader conversation about the state of the industry in terms of if we're in some kind of bubble and if valuations are too high, et cetera. But a year and a half in, you guys are recommitting to the LCS. So kind of what's your perspective on the state of the league, as it were, and how everything's looking?
I mean, our perspective is that Riot is currently running an incredibly strong business within esports and within LCS, right? Like they have it right now, and we have all the confidence in the world that they have it right going forward. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if that wasn't the case, right? So broader than that, like, look, I think every meaningful esports organization wants to be in the highest level, wants to be in tier one. I think the franchise model is incredibly interesting to us. It's one that we believe in. And I think over the last year and a half, we've seen that sort of play out in a very meaningful and positive way for LCS. And I just think it's on the right track for the future of esports.
How do you believe Dig can differentiate itself from the other brands that are in the LCS right now? I mean, a great example of this is we've seen 100T come in a year ago, and they really brought like a fresh face and look at apparel and that kind of thing. I'm curious where you think Dignitas' strengths are as a brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at a history of Dig, right, like within LCS in particular or League of Legends in particular, like it was one of those organizations that was pretty fun-loving in the sense that, like, as a fan, like, you kind of just wanted to root for these guys, right? So I personally really like that brand. I like that mentality. But at the same time, they could always compete, right? Like, and so we want to be that brand that comes in and produces content that is engaging, that like really brings in the old fans, brings in the new fans, that has fun, but at the same time, we can always challenge, right? And so, one thing I'm a little bit tired of is seeing the same people win, frankly, in LCS. And we're not here to get 9th and 10th place. Like, we're here to challenge for titles, and we're here to do it and build a brand that's meaningful and fun and that fans can latch onto.
Well, to be fair, when Dig left, Team Liquid hadn't won anything, and so I think the past 3 splits we've seen some new faces up there.
We've seen some new faces, but it's sort of the same old group, right? Like at the end of the day, the new faces, the new orgs, the new franchises that have come in during the franchise system have sort of taken a back seat to sort of the more endemic guys, right? So excited to sort of penetrate that top echelon.
This is a fun question for me to ask. I recently did a video sort of comparing the different amounts or ranking the teams by how much they had to spend for each win. And so there's a wild, if you look at the document, there's a wild difference between what some of the orgs are paying versus others, and some cases by almost a factor of 3. So within that sphere, where do you see Dig fitting in?
Well, I just think, look, without going too deep, like anybody can buy a championship, right? But I think that there's responsibilities as an organization and as a business that you have to assume, and that requires digging in deep and understanding what are truly the drivers within winning within LCS. Of course, money is one of them, right? But we think that we're a bit more clever than that. Again, we're joining an org that's incredibly data-driven, right? And we ourselves are incredibly data-driven, from the Sixers to the NBA 2K team that we have and on downward. So I don't think that we have to match the spending of perhaps the top esport org in LCS in order to dethrone them. I think we just have to be smarter.
That's a good answer. And I'm also kind of curious, for this split right now, will anybody see anything different? I mean, obviously the branding will stay the same, but is all this really just holding off until next year?
So most of it's behind the scenes right now, and really you'll start to see it escalate once the season comes to an end. Obviously, we want Clutch to go to the World Championships, so that could happen late in the fall or sometimes perhaps a little bit earlier. But I think in the fall you'll see a lot of these changes sort of be implemented publicly. But I will tell you that behind the scenes, I'm working today on things that are going to change this brand. I'm working tomorrow on things that are going to change this brand. Ultimately, with this split, will you see something much different? No, you're going to see it's the same Clutch team. It's going to be Clutch Gaming. I think there's some creative things that we might be able to do branding-wise, maybe with jerseys and things like that towards the end of the season. But for the most part, it's going to be behind the scenes, and then in the fall, you'll start to see us really ramp up the storytelling and the brand change over to Dig.
I think that's a good way to wrap up this conversation. Is there anything you want to say to any of the Dignitas fans who are coming out of the shadows now and reemerging, or anybody who's curious about how things are going to shape up?
Listen, like we all saw that kind of half-baked leak, right? And for me, the most important part of that was all the comments that I saw drop down from all the old Dig fans. Internally, we were, popping bottles seeing those comments. We can't wait to go out and to reach back out to those folks and to actually engage along in the process of what we want to build. So I encourage them to continue to speak up. I look forward to meeting them in person and literally building this org with them going forward.
Well, thank you so much for the interview, and congrats on the re-entrance into the LCS. Looking forward to see what the org can do over the next 6 to 12 months. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things esports right here on my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching that interview. It is the start of Summer Split. How exciting, I know. I just want to thank Alienware for sponsoring my stuff. Hey, do me a favor and subscribe. Not enough of you guys are subscribing lately. I'd like to see a little bit more subscriptions. While you're at it, also check out the description, alienware.com/Travis. Travis 10 off. That's 10 off. You get some money off of an amazing Alienware computer. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned throughout the rest of the split.